Good morning, fellow traders. This is Doug Campbell with Right Way Options, and this is the Morning Market Prep video for January 13th, 2025. Well, I hope everyone had a restful weekend because I think it is going to be a wild and maybe a little bit stressful week in the market ahead. Let's take a look at what happened overnight. We had Asian markets down across the board last night, feeling quite a little bit of bearishness after the U.S. jobs report really has set bond markets around the world into a rally mode, adding pressure to currencies. So if we take a look, Shanghai was down 0.25%, Hong Kong was down a full 1%, India fell 1.47%, South Korea was down, Australia was down, the Nikkei was down. It was a pretty rough night over there in Asian markets. If we were to take a look at European markets this morning, they're all lower across the board this morning. Once again, as this persistent worry about rising inflation, and of course the major concern that Europe continues to have with their economic situation declining, in the UK really leading that worry. So they are down across the board, with the DAX down 0.70%, FTSE's down 0.36%, and the CAC down 0.78%. Now, U.S. futures are also tracking lower here this morning, with NASDAQ taking the biggest hit at the moment. Right now, NASDAQ futures down pretty substantially, 246 points here at the moment. S&P 500 futures down 50.25 points, and we've got Dow futures down 135 points here at this very second. So feeling just a little bit on the bearish side. Now, unfortunately, when we look at bonds, they're not giving us any help here this morning. Bond yields this morning at on the 2-year 4.42%, the 10-year 4.79%, and those 30-year bonds at 4.96%. So continuing to see those rate pressures here in the market. So let's take a quick look at what we've got going on in oil. Oil has been rising and creating more pressure here on the market, seeing those oil prices moving back up in this morning. Well, that's not changing. We've got oil here this morning moving up, currently up $1.65 at 78.22 a barrel, adding more pressure to the economy. And we've got Brent crude running pretty substantially higher as well, now at 81.17 a barrel. Natural gas continuing its rally here to the upside. Right now, natural gas is up almost 18 cents and continuing to show big gap up here this morning, so keep an eye on that today. If we take a look at cryptos here this morning, well, they're feeling some pressure here today. Bitcoin at this moment down $3,807 a coin, or 3.96%, as the wild volatility continues here in these cryptos. And we're seeing pretty much red across the board in those cryptos this morning, with Ether down a whopping 6.48%, or $212 a coin. So watch that carefully. And then if we look at our precious metals here this morning, gold, after a pretty nice rally, getting a substantial pullback here today as it approaches some of these last recent gap up highs. And you can see down substantially, down $12. Well, excuse me, right now down $19.70 an ounce. And silver futures are down 75 cents to $30.50 an ounce. We're holding just a tiny little bit of green in copper this morning, but it is slipping here as other metals move lower like platinum and palladium. So kind of keep an eye on those. So what does all that mean for today? Well, how about we settle in? Let's buckle up. Let's get ready for the Monday edition of the Morning Market Prep video. Good morning once again, everyone, and thank you so much for being here. I very much appreciate it. Let's take a look at these index charts, see if we can gain a little bit of information about how we might want to approach the market for today. Remember, we want to look at the markets for what they are, not for what we want them to be. Shake off that bias because, boy, the volatility seems pretty high, and we're still adding additional pressure here to these markets. So first off, let's take a look here at the diamonds. You can see clearly we have initiated this downside move here, this head and shoulders pattern, and as you can see, we made that lower low. Now, keeping in mind, there is still a neckline here that could be breached or it could be held as a support level. If we take a look at that neckline a little bit closer here, right through there, and you'll notice we've got some support right through here as well. So we may come into a little bit of price support in that chart, but if those bears were to find additional inspiration here today and we break down through here, well, obviously that's going to raise some serious concerns for the market. Now, if those bulls can find inspiration in here and use those levels to bounce back up, well, we'll be back up here trying to test some of these downtrend here in the chart, and possibly even this resistance break here in the chart to see if we can push back through there. Now, we're going to need some good love in the market to see that occur, but it is certainly possible. Now, if we take a look at our SPY, feeling some pressure here this morning with the QQQ selling off so strongly. And we have also confirmed this head and shoulders downtrend here in the chart. You'll notice right in here, across through here, is our neckline of this head and shoulders. And that head and shoulders, although it struggled to develop, well, we have confirmed the downtrend with lower highs and lower lows in the market. Now, if there's any good news that we're coming into some support this morning, you'll notice here in this push down, we're coming into some support. So if the bulls can find some inspiration in the data today, then a lift back up, we might come back up here and see if we can attack that resistance. Pushing beyond that, we would attack up into here, and then of course anything beyond that, we're up here once again trying to test this downtrend in the chart. Now, if the bears were to find inspiration and we break through this area of price support, I would say the next area lower is a really strong price support. Right down through here, you can see all of this price data through this area in that chart. So watch that carefully here in the SPY. Our QQQ getting a pretty hard hit this morning, pushing down pretty substantially, and you can see we have confirmed this downtrending move. We can make lower highs, lower lows, lower highs, lower lows. So continuing to show that downtrending situation here in the market. We've got some support right through here, maybe just a tiny little bit lower in here, some pretty decent support. And if that were to break, well, I'm going to start moving this down progressively through these areas and levels in the chart if those bears still find reason to push this lower. Now, any kind of a bounce back up or relief back into the upside, let's look at these areas here. First, we'll need to kind of recover this little area this morning, and then of course pushing back up, and we'll be testing this resistance in the chart, and of course pushing through there, we'll be back up into this downtrend as resistance on the QQQ. So watch that closely. Now, our IWM also struggling and confirming the downtrend here. of this head and shoulders top. Right through here would be the neckline, and you can see we're down here testing that neckline as support in the chart. And the good news is we do have some other price support in here that might catch us in that chart. So if the bulls can find some inspiration here, let's see if we can bounce off of this area, come back up. Now we're going to have to do a lot of work, I think, to push back up through this candle and retest this area of resistance up in here. But watch that carefully if we can find some bullish inspiration. Now, if the bears were to find inspiration, well, you can see if we start breaking down through this level of price support that I had drawn there, then I would start looking for this area in the chart. And this is a much larger area of price support, and that possibility that we could sink right on into that pretty easily. And that would even be breaking that 200-day moving average here on IWM. Now let's take a look at our VIX. Our VIX has been rising, and as I continue to warn, you know, it's never that first wave that's a problem. It's when we hold supports here in the VIX and a hold trend, and that fear starts coming back in. So watch that carefully here today. We could see VIX expand a little bit, at least this morning, but we are in an oversold condition, and we'll talk about that in just a second. So watch that carefully if we continue to see that fear coming in the market. Our next area of resistance up here in the chart, well, we can see some price action resistance right there that we tested on Friday that we rejected. Maybe a push up into there, and then beyond that we might start looking for this area up here of price resistance in our VIX. If the bulls can find some inspiration, then a little bit of rest back in here would be in order. Maybe we can come back into some support. We'll be watching this upside trend as we do rest though in the market. And then if we take a look at our T21 22, well, our T21 22, and I'd say this gives us our best hope that with this gap down this morning, we could be nearing a support level and a potential relief rally. Now, let me be clear on this. I am suggesting that we're getting close to a potential relief rally, and that's all it is, a relief rally at this point. We have to remember we have some big data coming our way this week, and we may not be done with this volatility. Not only that, we have worry about the debt ceiling that's coming up. We have the beginning of earnings season coming in here on Wednesday that's likely to create some volatility, and then we've got Monday, which will be a holiday, Martin Luther King Day next Monday. We have the inauguration of the new president and likely a wave of tariffs being passed out. So watch that closely here. We've got a lot for this market to chew on. So anything that bounces back up toward those resistance areas or those downtrending lines that I showed in the index charts is nothing more than a relief rally. Be careful just racing in to buy the dip, because I think we've got some volatility coming our way, and there may be more downside to be seen in this market. Now let's take a look if the bears find inspiration today, which they are this morning. I'm going to guess we're going to be right down here almost on the bottom here on T21 22, which gives me that hope of that relief rally. And if those bulls can find inspiration here, well, you want to make note that we've got a big upside opportunity if those bulls can find something to grab onto. So far, those bonds and pressures around the world are not making the market feel too confident at the moment. We'll see if we can pick up a little bit of confidence as the day goes on. Now, if we take a look at our T21 08, the percentage of stocks above the 40-day moving average, I got to tell you, pulling back here on Friday, but it wasn't a big hit at all, even though we had such a big move in the market. percentage of stocks above the 40-day kind of held in there. Didn't make new lows here on the day, so we've got support in here in the chart. Again, if we can find that bullish activity in here, we need to see that starting to push back up, attacking some of these resistance levels back to the upside. If the bears were to find inspiration here, well, you do want to note, as much as we have pushed back, doesn't mean we can't go lower. So we'll want to be keeping an eye on these areas of support down here if those bears continue to push. Our T2107, however, had a really rough day on Friday, breaking down below these areas of support in the chart, falling substantially. We're only about 39% of the stocks holding above their 200-day moving average at this point. And I know everyone thinks, oh my gosh, it can't get a whole lot worse. But if you look at this chart, it certainly can. So if we continue to see that bearish push here in the market, let's start looking down in these areas here for some of that price support in the chart that could hold us for a little bit of a bounce or a relief. If the bulls find inspiration here today, let's see if we can push this back up, start testing some of these resistance levels in the chart, relieving some of that pressure. And remember, at this point, it's only a relief rally that may be possible. If we take a look at T2101 getting a little bit of a hook back up. Now, unfortunately here, when we start to see breadth increase, and remember, Friday was a pretty big sell-off, when we start to see the breadth increase on a bearish wave, that can be a concern. That means those bears might be gaining some confidence in what they're doing, and that's where really bearish tendencies of the market can show up. So watch that closely. If we can get a relief rally here in the market, we want to see that breadth continuing to move up. We want to see that bullish breadth coming in, pushing and supporting this market, because what we've seen lately is, as the market has been trying to bounce back up, or these morning gaps that we have been experiencing last week, they haven't been supported by market breadth. So this is a critical situation here. Now, keeping in mind, we can go lower. We can certainly go lower on this market breadth. And remember, we're in a blackout period where the stock companies cannot do corporate buybacks and things like that. And there's an awful lot of worry that we have set the bar really high for earnings this quarter. We have pushed prices to beyond perfection in some places. So they're going to really have to perform in those earnings to hit some of those targets. Otherwise, the markets could be disappointed. So be really careful here. Let's take a look at our economic calendar here for today. And our economic calendar, well, pretty light day today, but it's all building up to a very busy week of data. As you can see, we've got a 3-month bond auction, 6-month bond auction, and a treasury statement in here, and that's going to be all the inspiration that we're going to get today on Monday. However, when we look into Tuesday, just be keeping in mind this is going to be a very important number here on Tuesday. We're going to get that PPI number before the market opens, so be prepared for that. We've got an NFIB small business optimism report in there. We've got some bond announcements and some Fed speak. As we look into Wednesday, it doesn't ease up at all. We have those normal mortgage applications. We've got Barkin will be in there speaking, and then before the bell, we're going to get the CPI, consumer prices. Empire State Manufacturing numbers will be in here, a bunch of Fed speak, and some bond auctions to boot. Moving into Thursday, jobless claims. We're also going to add in retail sales, Philly Fed, import-export prices, business inventories, housing market index. So a busy day on Thursday, and then jumping into Friday, we've got housing starts and permits, industrial production, Baker Hughes rig, and Treasury International Capital. So keep in mind, as we progress through this week, we've got some big data points coming our way. So be prepared for volatility. Now, not to mention that, we also have earnings that will really be kicking up here in the market. But fortunately, today we don't have a whole lot going on in that earnings calendar to be terribly worried about. As a matter of fact, this morning I have no notables for today, for this morning, but this afternoon our most notable is going to be KBH. And remember, this is pretty normal to have very light numbers of earnings as we approach the big kickoff, which will be on Wednesday with JP Morgan, BlackRock, Bank of New York, Citibank, Goldman Sachs, and Wells Fargo will all be reporting Wednesday morning. So we'll have to keep a close eye on that. Let's take a look at some stocks that could be setting up for today. But before we do that, everyone, if you could do me that quick favor, if this is the first time you've seen these videos, if you could please click that subscribe button on YouTube. Also click that bell icon when it pops up so you'll be notified every time I post a video. And if you find these videos to be useful or helpful, if you could do me that favor, click that thumbs up button and leave a brief comment. I do try to answer the majority of those. I'm getting so busy with some of that I can't answer all of them every time, but I was really busy last week covering 2 trading rooms, and so today I think I'll be back on task keeping up. So if you have some questions or something I can help you in those comments, please feel free to ask. Also, thank you to everyone who continues to support the channel through the Buy Me a Coffee link just below the title of the video. You guys are truly awesome. Let's take a look at some of these stocks setting up. Remember, everyone, they're not recommendations to buy or sell any security. You're going to have to do your own due diligence. Be very, very careful in this market. As I said, expecting some volatility in the next few, I'm going to say the next few weeks. With all this uncertainty possibly unfolding, so be prepared. Let's take a look at a few of these. Peloton is a stock that has been holding up pretty well despite the selling here in the market. Notice we got this little downtrend here going on in the chart, but I still think there may be that possibility, if we can find a little bit of relief rally, that we might get this to follow through. We had a good candle in here on Friday. We might get that follow through up here. It's going to be important. We got to break through this resistance, prove to hold up here, and then we can really start to get that resumption to the upside. But as is a lot of stocks right now in the market, we also run that potential that we could smack into that resistance in a relief rally and then just continue on lower. So watch that carefully. Might want to keep an eye on Walmart. Walmart has been a very strong stock in this market. We've got a little double bottom formation in here, and the good news is here in Walmart we've followed back through to the upside. If we can prove to hold up in here, I would look for that next opportunity to the upside. Keep a close eye on Walmart. TSM, now TSM shot up strongly here last week and boy, faded all the way back down. So watch this area right in here. If we can hold this trend, if those buyers can find any reason for inspiration here today, we might catch this trend support as we have the last several times. Even though we're selling off here this morning, we could reverse that and start pushing back up, get back above this resistance in the chart. Watch that carefully on TSM. Pretty nice potential if those bulls happen to step up today. You might want to take a look at GE. Now, GE has been moving back up here in the market, pushing back up toward this downtrend. Notice we've got this little wedging pattern or little triangle formation forming. We're going to need some bullishness in the market to push this through, but if we can push up through here, then we may have some opportunity that this can hold and start resuming that trend to the upside. However, If we get some bearishness coming into the market and we continue to see that pressure in here, there's every reason to believe this could falter, break that upside trend, and we continue following this downtrend. So watch that pretty carefully. Again, there's a lot of these stocks this way. Now, a couple places that's been pretty interesting here to me, it just seems like all of a sudden these stocks have come from way out of the blue, and these are names from the past showing lots and lots of bullishness here. Take a look at Blackberry continuing to show all kinds of bullishness here. If this rests and holds this support up here, well, I'd be looking for that next opportunity. I do think it does need a little bit more rest, but watch that carefully in here for that potential. Blackberry could move on higher. And if we take a look at Nokia, again, really big flash from the past here. Unfortunately, this morning, this is now breaking this upside trend. So we'll have to watch that carefully here with this gap down. Maybe Nokia is falling out of grace here at the moment, breaking down below this support. If it can get right back up there and hold, well, then we've got something that could be kind of interesting there in that sector of the market. Take a look at Globe. Globe has been holding in here, hasn't been kind of squeezing down. As you can see, I'm a little bit worried about that potential downtrend, picking up some energy and pushing it off that ledge. Watch that closely, but if we can get a little bit of bullishness here in the market, that may be able to push on higher. Ralph Lauren continues to hang in here. You guys know I've been talking about this for some time. We popped through my alert here, rallied up, and now pushing back. We'll have to see if this can hold on to this support, but a pretty good setup in here for a bullish move if we can get some buyers coming in to the market. Now, Meta on Friday holding up nicely in here. As you can see, we pushed back up through this resistance. We lost it there for a while. There's that little W formation in the chart, pushed up through, resting back. Boy, of some of the big techs here, Meta seems to be set up about as good as any of them. Obviously, we have this big resistance up here, but watch that closely if we can find that bullish action to push on through. And Google is the other one of the big techs. If we're going to get any kind, if we're going to get any kind of love here in the market on the tech side, I would keep an eye on Google for that push back up. When we look at things like Apple's struggling here pretty heavily, and boy, I can't type this morning apparently, and failing here at this price resistance, moving back down to this support. I think we're going to need quite a relief rally to even get this to come back up and break this downtrend. So watch that carefully. There may be quite a few of these tech stocks falling into major short patterns here as we move forward. So watch those carefully. Chewy is another one I think would be a good idea to pay attention to. Chewy is holding in here nicely on that bullish side. If it can hold the support here in the chart, then we're going to look good. Now, I'm going to run through these really quickly, but inverse ETFs, guys. Inverse ETFs are holding these very, very bullish patterns here in the market. Keep an eye on DOG, keep an eye on DXD, keep an eye on SH, keep an eye on PSQ, keep an eye on things like RWM for those inverse ETFs, or things like TZA if you like those very heavily leveraged ETFs. Take a look at FAZ on the financial side. FAZ setting up for an upside move, trying to break through this downtrend up here. And any rest or hold in here, remember the big bank reports coming up. That's not looking good for those when we look at XLF and seeing that failure here in XLF. So start looking at some of those inverse ETFs for that potential hold. with this volatility, we might find some relief there. So with that, everyone, I want to wish you all a fantastic day. I wanted just to issue out there to be very careful this week. Be cautious because the volatility could be pretty high with all of the things that we have coming our way. Be prepared for that. I'll wish you all the very best, and I'll see you right back here bright and early Tuesday morning. Take care, everyone.